Okay guys, so I'm going to be doing a reaction video. I don't normally like doing reaction videos because instead of being a content creator, I am actually a dog trainer by trade. I actually train dogs for a living, and that's literally what I do every day. This video was made by one ZAK George, who is an individual that YouTube likes a lot. We'll give him that acknowledgement. The YouTube algorithm likes Mr. George and terms him a dog trainer. So we'll go along with that for now. You know, and I put dog trainer in quotations. We can get back to that later. But before I continue, just know that I will not be watching this video in its entirety simply because I can't. This video that I'm doing right now is for educational purposes. I am not doing this for entertainment purposes. This is for educational purposes, and believe me, I'm very serious about that. There's a lot of accusations and insinuations made by Mr. George about police dogs and dog sport in general. And as a subject matter expert, I am uniquely qualified to address a lot of the nonsense perpetuated in this video. So let's get started. The original video link will be in the description below. Feel free to watch it if you can stomach it. Anyways, let's get after it.
In this video, we'll be discussing some distressing themes, and there will be graphic images at times. I would encourage you to listen, but not watch if you find these topics too distressing. State-sanctioned attack dogs.
So, I mean, one point to note right away is, you know, he's talking about distressing images, which probably speaks to the type of audience he has. You know, probably people that are very easily triggered, very soft, fragile mentally, and most likely as well physically. So, you know, that's just something to note.
A completely reasonable way to keep the peace if you're living in a dystopian nightmare.
We see and hear writhing in pain.
A canine to attack an unarmed black driver surrendering.
All right. So here's the thing that you have to understand where this is already going. Like, you can see that the news clippings. First of all, he's using mainstream media, you know, to feed this. And listen, all fairness to mainstream media, though I'm not particularly charitable with them. They are a bunch of liars that misrepresent the truth to push whatever agenda, political agenda they happen to be behind. And we all know, you know, what their agenda has been over the last, you know, 4 to 10 years. But nevertheless, he's already kind of stated his position. His position is that state-sanctioned attack dogs, basically using dogs for law enforcement and military purposes, that's what he's alluding to. He's using, of course, emotional language. Mr. George is, by my understanding, he is a positive-only trainer. So you have to understand, positive-only trainers are already very ideologically driven. They don't kind of operate in the land of reality. They don't have a balanced or natural approach to dog training. They have a very, like, using his own words in an appropriate manner, a very dystopian, you know, ideology that's based in what they wish were true versus what is actually true. I'm not going to get so far into that. I actually have videos on positive-only training that you're welcome to watch, where I get into myth-busting it and explaining to you the sickness, the mental sickness that you know, pushes people to promote this type of training. However, let's address, you know, kind of, you can already see where he's going. He's using certain key things. A black man, you know, an innocent black man was attacked by a dog, and, you know, you can already see where this is going. So let's continue.
Get the dog to release him.
You can't send a dog without getting into excessive force issues on somebody with their hands up.
We need to start talking about the disturbing reality of weaponized dogs.
Okay. I mean, what's disturbing, Zach, quite frankly, is your face. I don't think you're well, but that's just a quick observation. But anyways, let's just move forward here, just for the sake of let's see kind of how he positions this argument.
Massive issues with the way that weaponized dogs still exist to this day. Dogs were formerly weaponized by colonial forces in the Caribbean and Africa. There they used dogs to control and oppress local populations.
We can already see where this is going.
The U.S. military,
It's kind of going.
Library of Congress actually has a lithograph from 1848. It's literally titled "Hunting Indians in Florida with Blood." Florida with states use dogs to track down and capture runaway slaves too, and those today. And all of this laid the groundwork for their wide.
So you can kind of. Oh, I think we've made a little mistake here. Let me pull out of this. Just go back. Bring this back.
In this video, we'll be discussing some distressing
Sorry, guys.
themes.
So you can kind of already see where Mr. George is going. He's already linked the use of dogs, which have been widely used for the last 5 to 10,000 years, depending on who you want to listen to, by humans for everything from hunting to war and every, pulling heavy burdens, search work, everything, guard work, everything, right? So he's cherry-picked moments in history or atrocities in history, or negative things in history where they happen to use dogs. They also used horses too, Mr. George. I don't know if you'd like to bring that up as well. Maybe talk about the evils of using horses in war and police work, and talk about the evils of hunting slaves on horseback and all this stuff that he's linking, that he's using these key moments that bring up a lot of emotion. Again, he's speaking to his audience, and what you have to understand is, for somebody to follow an individual like him, for somebody to actually look to this person for any kind of advice about dog training, especially considering the actual dog training he puts up on his channel, if you have a chance, please, I strongly recommend that you review the actual content, the actual training content that he has, and then determine for yourself if that's something that's reasonable or something that's believable, workable, something that would actually help the average individual with their dog, whether it's a behavioral case or just your regular pet dog. And if you come to the same reasonable conclusion that most other logical and reasonable people would come to, you would realize that everything else he says is now obviously very suspect. What you see here, though, is the typical, usually people with the woke ideology, which also they align very much with the people that have the force-free ideology. They're pretty much one and the same. It's basically like wokeness in dog training, right? Let's look at everything through this dystopian, belief system that has nothing to do with nature or what's natural or what is true or what is objective. Let's instead put what we wish it were based on our own maybe trauma or just a mental illness. Let's put that upon this thing that is real, such as dog training, nature, politics, foreign policy, energy, all these things. So anyways, just understand that what he's doing is very intelligent, because it's going to grab a lot of people that don't stop to think about it for about 5 minutes, especially people that aren't super familiar with the topic. And it's also going to really stimulate his base, which I assume are people very much like him, fragile, woke, very left-leaning. So.
For runaway slaves too. And those slave scouting, modern attack dogs are highly specialized for roles in military and law enforcement operations. Their skills these days rely on detection and focused aggression.
This military working dog.
That's actually not quite correct. He's describing behaviors. Their skills rely on the drive that these dogs have. Okay, so what you have to understand about dogs that do detection work, right? He's describing an outcome. He's not describing where the actual skill, where the actual ability of the dog to perform this behavior. It's like, why do you think you see certain types of dogs in these roles? The German Shepherds, the Belgian Malinois, the herders, which is usually a mix of German Shepherd, Malinois, and Dutch Shepherd. That's what you're kind of seeing here in the video. By the way, this trainer whose video he's taken, I'm familiar with this individual. I'm sure he'd be very happy to know that he's in a ZAK George video. These dogs have very intense prey drive. They are genetically predisposed to do this. Just like, you're not going to force your average dog to herd sheep. You need a border collie, you need a cattle dog, you need something that's genetically predisposed to do that work. And then with not too much effort, you can get them doing that work. Police dogs, military dogs do the same thing. Detection work, search work, bite work. This is all very natural for the dogs. They're naturally driven to do these things. They have the courage, they have the nervous system, they have the stimulus response mechanisms, they have the prey drive to do it. And, it's very much inside of them to do these things.
Dog in training is practicing controlled aggression. In a matter of months, they'll be ready to be deployed.
Again, this is prey drive work.
Military bases across the globe.
The first formal police dog program was established in Belgium. These dogs were systematically trained for police work, marking the beginning of more structured use of dogs in law enforcement. In the early
Okay, so he's getting into the
reports
history.
involved training dogs to track and bite suspects and to physically defend their handler. The Nazi regime further
The Nazi regime. So now he's tying it to the Nazi regime, and that's again very understandable for an individual that has the let's say the predisposition that Mr. George has. He doesn't mention that dogs were used in the United States. Dogs were used at the same time all over the world and have been for many thousands of years. But of course, let's talk instead about the plantation slavery in the 1700s. Let's talk instead about the old U.S. government using dogs to track down Native Americans, and let's talk about Nazis, because this is what's actually going to galvanize his base. This is going to galvanize those of a woke ideology and position them against these dogs. We are going to talk about the reality of these dogs and what they can do and why they are used. And we're going to speak about it from a very objective standpoint. Believe me, I am not like rah, 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 police, blue line, hold the blue line. I'm not that guy. I am not that guy, okay? But we're going to be objective about this.
these practices and use them for terrorism.
Just again, understand what he's doing. Oh, civil rights. Why am I surprised?
There were literally war photography.
Colonial Kenya.
Oh, Kenya. We got the apartheid.
Enthusiast participants.
Man, like, I don't know. Who did he miss? Did he miss any other of the recent famous dictatorial regimes? I noticed he stuck only with like the racist regimes. He didn't go to his good friends, the communists. I'm pretty sure he's a big fan of the communists and how the Bolsheviks and the Stalinists used dogs and how the communist Chinese used dogs. I noticed he didn't do that. He only stuck with the good old-fashioned, white racist regimes. Those are the ones that he stuck with, and there's a reason for that. You must understand that. So anyways, again, very, very, very clear what he's building towards, and those that are blind to this will of course be sucked into it, but that's not who I'm speaking to.
Paid in protection sports. And these dogs are trained to apprehend and bite a human target, simulating scenarios where dogs
This looks like
are
PSA
trained to
Nationals.
protect their handlers, or to apprehend suspects in the real world. Prior to the early 1900s, attack dogs used on populations were drafted based on a variety of different factors, but it really lacks strict formality. Now, the introduction of bite sports sped the transition from...
I'm sure Brady, this is Brady that he's got a video of. He blurred Brady's face out. Brady's a really good helper down in the U.S. He works with my friend Stefan a lot, or he did. I don't know if they still work together. I'm sure, again, he would appreciate, being in a video by this deluded individual. But regardless, again, you can kind of see what he's building towards, what he's linking bite sports to. What you don't understand is bite sports existed initially, and I don't know what he's going to say about bite sports, but they exist. I'm sure it's not going to be good. Bite sports existed, and they were created initially as a way to test dogs, these types of dogs, for breeding. They were a way to show the dogs, right, so that you could look at the working skill of the dog, look at the working ability of the dog, and then make intelligent decisions when it came to breeding, or just creating a standard for what these dogs should be like. And various bite sports evolved over the last 100 years, depending on the specific type of dog, whether we're talking Belgian Shepherds, German Shepherds, and so on and so forth. So let's see where he goes with this.
Ad hoc use to systemic training policies.
Nice
The
escape,
most
Brady.
well-known version of bite sport is something known as IGP. That's a German acronym.
Oh, that's my sport.
Translates to International Working Dog Test. The sport of IGP includes tracking, obedience, and the activities we've been discussing. As we
Brittany
mentioned,
Pelletier.
IGP was
I'm sure she'll be happy.
originally developed in pre-Nazi Germany. And it's
Pre-Nazi Germany.
to test
See,
potential working
he could have said just Germany. He had to go pre-Nazi. He just has to use that keyword Nazi.
for police and military jobs, and to showcase a dog's physical ability and aggression. Now, even today, many police and military dogs receive commands in German.
German! Again, linking it, just because, you know, a lot of dog handling, and by the way, I have a fair few German commands as well that I use, and the reason why is because I speak English on a daily basis, and when I'm practicing a competition dog sport, I like my commands to be completely separate from what I use on a daily basis, just so that it further increases the dog's association with what we're doing, with the very specific mindset, drive, and desire. Again, ZAK wouldn't understand because he doesn't actually train these types of dogs, or really any type of dog. I want the dog to understand that context, that mindset that I need from him in that type of work. So again, he's using, they use German commands, again, trying to kind of make that tenuous link between Nazis and working dogs, right?
This really reflects.
So again, like, this is design, right? Like, what he's showing this individual here, and he's screaming, and the dog's on him, but he doesn't say what this individual did. This could be a child molester. This could be a murderer. You know, there are certainly cases in which police send dogs when they should not. But the vast majority of cases when they use the dog, it is warranted. It is actually a good option to use it. And I'll get further into why you would use police dogs and why they're actually a significantly better option than a lot of the other options available to police. You know, what you have to understand with police dogs, and really any kind of dog that's biting a human, that reaches into a primal part of you, right? That reaches into a primal part of you. Like, having been bitten and having a dog attached to me that we had to forcibly remove, and having been bitten actually a number of times, you know, it looks a lot worse than it actually is. I don't know that I would prefer, you know, like, I definitely wouldn't want to be shot, and you have to understand that in many cases being shot might be the alternative to a police dog. You know, police dogs are certainly more reliable than things like tasers, which only work like 50% of the time, and tasers are quite painful and also run the risk of stopping someone's heart, and they have many times in the past. So these are things to just already keep in mind. You know, beating people with nightsticks, this is something that also used to happen. So there are many alternatives to the police dog that aren't necessarily more humane or hurt less, right? But again, we're being shown these images of people, and we're just being asked to take it on. You know, the assumption is, oh, this is wrong. This is wrong. Why is it wrong? You don't know what that guy did. You don't know why that dog was sent on him, right? And I don't either. But I know that the vast majority of times when law enforcement does use dogs, it is warranted.
The enduring influence of these historical training methods. So this development of bite sports provided a formal framework for training dog bridge these formalized training techniques to create highly disciplined men in the systematic use of dogs as tools in modern bite sports were directly translated from and into methods for using military and police dogs to attack humans. Now, modern bite sports enthusiasts may not condone this history, but
so again, he's drawing the link between bite sports and, you know, dogs being trained to attack humans, and it's true that what was done in bite sports, in fact, bite sport, you have to understand that bite sport is at the forefront of dog training, right? All dog training, but it is at the forefront of dog training, and the police and the military are very much downstream of bite sports. And what you have to understand too is bite sport provides a constant supply of dogs that go into police and military work. The blood stock utilized in bite sports in competition that incentivizes private individuals like myself to breed, right? We breed and we compete and we push training because we're always trying to be competitive. So training methods have evolved significantly because of bite sport, and these training methods are now coming into police and military use, where they're using, you know, training from the 70s, from the 80s, like old, you know, not particularly good training methods. The dog sport and bite sport specifically are at the forefront of dog training, regardless of what, you know, a sick individual like ZAK would tell you. So you have to understand that, you know, bite sports provide not only a blood stock that, you know, is extremely necessary in filling, you know, all these roles that are required of the working dog, whether it's border security, you know, detection work, search and rescue work, apprehension work, so on and so forth. It also provides training methodology that's now being taken by these organizations and, you know, changed, of course, somewhat to, you know, work from, you know, what's working on the competition field to now, you know, working on the street, so on and so forth. So he's partially right there. Again, he's using a lot of emotional images to get something out of you. All right, let's see what Mr. George has.
Concerns of animal welfare and public safety.
Oh, that's important. Hold on, let's go
And
back.
regulation in various countries increase the bond between a handler and their dog. These bite sports have.
So he just said that bite sports could increase the bond between the handler and the dog. I don't know that the bite sport itself is responsible for that. I think just the training required to reach the level where you can actually show your dog in a competition requires, without a shadow of a doubt, a significant working bond between the dog and the handler. Something, again, that Mr. George would really know nothing about, because he's never taken the field, he's never competed with his dogs in any kind of meaningful way, and he's never trained a dog. He's never spent the thousands of hours necessary to train and develop a dog to that level. In fact, I will say this, and I'll say this right now, I guarantee you this, Mr. George, I will put $25,000 in cash on the line. Okay, I will take my bite sport dog. I'll take my Nazi trained dog. Okay, and I'll go to New York City. I think that's where you're around. I'll go to New York City. I'll go to the most busy city you want me to go to, and you'll come too with your dog that you have such a wonderful bond with. We'll take the leashes, we'll take the collars off our dogs, and we'll go for a 15, 20-minute walk, and we'll run our dogs through some obedience exercises. We'll just have them loose, we'll have them around us, we'll have them around people, and we'll see what the performance is. We'll see what the bond is. I know you'll never take me up on this because you don't want your dog to run away in the city, and you don't want to be embarrassed on video, but I'm just putting it out there. That's literally what I'm willing to do, because I know what my dog will do, and I know how my dog will perform, and I also know how your dogs will do and how they will perform. But anyways, I digress. Let's move forward. So he doesn't really know anything about bond, but he has acknowledged that, and I'm sure it was hard for him to acknowledge that there is a bond between people that compete with their dogs in bite sport.
Experience significant scrutiny and regulation in various countries over, you guessed it, concerns of animal welfare and public safety.
So again, he's referring to Western Europe. Look at this. He has some videos of apartheid. Sorry, my internet's slowing down here. So he's referring to Western Europe. He's referring to various regulations that have been passed, not actually directly related to bite sport, more related to training dogs in general, where they've banned certain tools like e-collars, and they've even banned dog crates in some places. It's just insanity. But you have to understand, if you're aware of politics in general, they're not banning these things out of actual knowledge, and in many cases they actually even offer exemptions for law enforcement and military. And if these things were so bad and terrible, why would they exempt their military and law enforcement from using these devices and using these training methods? But you have to understand that in Western Europe, wokeness is truly a virus that has taken over, and it has leached into everything from dog training to various other policies that they have, which is why they have the struggles, political and social, that they have right now. So in Western Europe, yes, certain training methodologies are banned. As far as I know, there is no ban on bite sport. He's referring to one rule that says you can't make contact with a dog, which stopped in IGP training, or in IGP, the sport that he referred to earlier in competitions. They no longer strike the dog with the soft padded stick, which was actually an essential portion of the test to determine if the dog had the courage to do the work. And when I say strike, it's a padded stick, the flexible stick. You can rewind the video and watch it. And when they drive the dog, they would strike the dog 3 times in a drive over the shoulders with the stick. And of course, it's a padded stick, right? It's a flexible stick that has a leather padding around it, so it's not going to injure the dog in any way. But it does create a physical and mental stress for the dog, and part of the test is to judge the courage of the dog. Should this dog breed? Does this dog have the genetic type that we need in order to create more resilient working dogs? And resilience is a big part of what we should be testing when we are, selecting, working dogs, when we're celebrating working dogs, when we're, competing with them. Even if it's just a competition or a sport, we should still, definitely weed out any kind of weakness in the breed, because these things are not productive from a breeding standpoint. We've already just talked about how the dogs that compete in bite sport end up in military and police applications, actually do save lives, actually have to do things on the street. Even if they're just a protection dog, they need to be able to do these things.
The use of police attack dogs seems to violate the Constitution in at least 4 ways. It often constitutes excessive force and unreasonable seizure under the 4th Amendment. Severe injuries inflicted by police dogs can be seen as cruel and unusual punishment. That's the 8th Amendment.
Yeah, again, he's being very selective with his information. That would assume that the dog being sent was in lieu of some other form of force that they were going to use, right? He makes it sound like these people are just being helpless victims, and the dogs are just being sent on them. In many cases, these are bad guys. These are guys that have caused injury and harm to society. These are people that, are very dangerous, and the dog is a less lethal option. Right, and we can certainly talk about lethal options, because those would certainly be used. Again, Mr. George likes to use videos of black people getting mauled by the dogs, and of course that's also very intentional. Just know that. He's talking about rights violations, talking about the Constitution. The woke people don't care about the Constitution unless they can use it to push one of their, the various agendas that they have forward. But regardless, let's move forward. Let's see what else he's got to say here.
Actually, the 6th, 9th, and 13th as well. This pattern of rights violations is alarming, and it points to a deeply systemic issue within law enforcement practice. The oppressive use of dogs extends from law enforcement.
Systemic issues in law enforcement practices, the oppressive, again, all key words that he's using. You have to understand, these people fundamentally are pushing the ideology, and they don't know why they're pushing it. Like, people like ZAK, they're pawns, right? They're pushing the defund the police ideology, and again, I'm no like Homer for the police, right? I think we should always look very skeptically upon governmental organizations, but you have to understand the difference between local law enforcement and federal law enforcement. Defund the police is being pushed by individuals and doing things to disempower the police, like let's say taking a working canine away from them and so on and so forth, and limiting their ability to actually gain control over dangerous felons and forcing them to put themselves in more danger or not do their job, right? This is all on purpose, right? Defunding the police is actually pushed by those originally, right? By those that want a federal police force that is accountable to no one but the bureaucracy, the swamp, the people at the top. Local law enforcement is more accountable to a community. So the more they can push like these measures that will disempower local law enforcement, the more they can centralize power and make sure that the people with the guns are only answering to those at the very top. You have to understand that a lot of people don't, because again, they think emotionally, they don't think long term, they don't have a strategic mindset, relatively low IQ in many cases, unfortunately, and very emotional. So, these types of things resonate with, yeah, we should defund the police, not thinking, hey, what's coming down the road when you defund the police? It's not going to be this land of Shangri-La. And if you don't believe me, go and see what happened to Portland when they defunded the police. See what happened to places like, what is it, that place where that fentanyl addict died? Oh, George Floyd, whatever that place, Minnesota, is it that where it is? Anyways, regardless, you kind of understand what I'm getting at here. And he's kind of in that same vein. Now we're going to have a...
fear, and they contribute to the violent dehumanization of incarcerated people.
Violent dehumanization of incarcerated people. Now listen, you can already see Mr. ZAK George is very soft on crime. He wants us to feel bad for people in prisons. Generally speaking, they're not using dogs to extract. This is going to be a whole bunch of graphic videos of, dogs being used as cell extraction dogs. Listen, COs in prison generally do not want to be bothered with all this nonsense, with all this, risk associated with doing a cell extraction, all the paperwork, so on and so forth. Quite frankly, these happen because there happens to be actually very violent and dangerous people in prison that, have hurt and killed many correctional officers and hurt and killed fellow inmates. And these people need to be controlled. And I know Mr. George would not care one iota if a human went in there and got injured, or if that person, and many of these people that he's, standing up for, he's so concerned about their oppression, have actually really hurt fellow members of society, have in many cases killed them, violated children. We're talking the worst of the worst, right? Doesn't mean that we should just be willy-nilly setting dogs on people, and he would have you believe that that's happening, but there's actually quite a lot of paperwork associated with deploying police dogs, and police dogs will very shortly be a thing of the past. I'll explain why more at the end, but that's not the truth at all. So just understand what he's doing. All right, police dogs, let's go forward. Let's see what else he's got.
Investigation by the Marshall Project revealed that police dogs have bitten at least 32,000 people in the last 10 years. Many of those were life-altering injuries. Minoritized communities are...
Again, he's going back to that well, man. He's going back to that well. 32,000 people in the last 10 years, and most of them, again, using this, it's like, why don't you talk, Mr. George, about all the... So you have to understand this. Why doesn't he talk about all the good things police dogs have done? Because police dogs, I know he would have you believe that they're these, mindless, there's these animals driven into a frenzy by racist white people to oppress minorities. But, the reality is dogs are dogs, and they've been dogs for thousands of years, and we've been using them in various ways for thousands of years. There's a reason why we use police dogs. Believe me, if there was like some widget the police could buy that would take the place of a dog, they would do so in a heartbeat, and they will be doing so shortly. Again, I'll explain more at the end. But what you have to understand, again, he's woke, right? He's a clearly, an extreme left-wing person, force-free dog trainer, no big surprise, right? So of course he's coming at it from that lens, and he would have you believe the same thing. So be very aware of that right from the get-go. But police dogs literally save lives every year. They save the people's lives that they bite in many cases, because the alternative would be deadly force. Right? When police are dealing with a situation, they have a ladder of force that they can use. And the less lethal options they have, the less likely they are to use lethal force. So whether the force is justified or not, I would rather someone get bit than someone get shot. But here's the other thing about police dogs that Mr. George doesn't know and wouldn't know, because he probably doesn't know any police and he doesn't know any dogs that do this type of work, and he's not familiar with the industry. I sell police dogs and train the dogs, and I'm very involved in bite sports, so I'm well aware of many parts of this industry. What he doesn't tell you is that the very presence of the dog alone often de-escalates the situations. He's only showing you where the dog actually bites. In many cases, the police just say, police canine with a dog, right? Police canine handler with a dog, I'll send the dog, come out now or you will be bit. How many times you see, whether it's in the prison, whether it's in, on the street, that the criminal surrenders immediately, when before you would have had to escalate up that ladder of force. The dog is an enormous deterrent. It is an enormous deterrent, because just as you have that visceral feeling when you see the dog attacking somebody, imagine if you're actually there on the ground, you're a bad guy, you're up to no good, and they say, hey, we got the dog. Yes, sir, right? The dog actually de-escalates more than a gun does, right? And that is a statement of fact. It's objective fact. You can ask any of the police guys on the road, to the extent that police officers will even lie and say they have a dog when they don't. I'll release the dog. They'll say that. They don't even have a dog. They'll say it because they know how powerful that is, okay? So the dog just being there de-escalates situations, right? And the reality is, most dog bites, yeah, they're unpleasant. They're painful, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not usually a particularly significant injury. Especially in many cases, you'll see that the dog is, he bites a specific area and he stays there when trained properly. That also minimizes the damage. But, that's the reality of it. Again, are police dogs often, not as trained as they could be? For sure. Do police sometimes send dogs when they shouldn't? Yeah, but they also do a lot of other things that they shouldn't sometimes, because they're humans and they make mistakes just like anything else. And the solution to that is to hold them accountable as a community, which is why you need local law enforcement, not federal law enforcement that you could never hold accountable for anything, because they don't answer to you. They don't answer to your community. They don't answer to your state, your province, your city, your town. They only answer to those faceless, shadowy figures at the very top. And those types of people would like for to have a monopoly on all the law enforcement out there. And believe me, dogs would be the least of your problem if they got their way.
Proportionately affected by.
All right, yes, it's all racist.
In addition to suspects who have their rights and their physical bodies violated in these attacks, innocent bystanders are often caught while walking.
So he's going to talk now about, people that have been accidentally bitten by police dogs, and surely it does happen, just as people have been, hurt in police chases, and they've been hit by stray bullets during shootings, and the reality is, when things like this can happen, and when things like this happen, we need to have an inquest. We need to determine if a big mistake was made by law enforcement, and in many cases there was a mistake. But again, these are relatively rare instances, right? But if there is a mistake, definitely things need to be done to prevent that mistake from occurring in the future. So he's gonna talk a little bit about all the people that were mistakenly bitten by dogs, and it's happened, but it's definitely not an endemic problem. He's trying to make it sound like a pandemic. I would say that people getting bit by pet dogs that were poorly trained by people such as Mr. George are far more likely and at risk than random people getting bit by one of the few police dogs that are out there and out of control. All right, let's see what this individual has to say.
As heroes, without acknowledging the violence and trauma they inflict.
All right. Yes, because I know he doesn't like that they're called heroes. He wants to talk about the violence and trauma. Again, using keywords designed to elicit emotion. What you have to understand, again, you can see the theme of what he's doing here. I don't think dogs are heroes. I mean, there are dogs that can certainly have a more noble character. In many cases, they're just doing what they were trained to do. He's talking violence and trauma as if, again, these dogs are just being habitually set on innocent individuals that, are fantastic. And again, if you ever want to wonder why Los Angeles and New York City are in the crime-ridden state that they're in now, and of course disproportionately only in low-income neighborhoods. People like Mr. George, usually live in pretty upscale areas. They have private security, so on and so forth. They don't have to worry about this type of stuff, and they make sure that the law enforcement understands that, in this area where all the white people are, all the rich white people that vote left, you enforce the law here. Where the poor blacks and Hispanics are, defund the police. Like, don't worry, don't be racist, leave them alone, right? So disproportionately, people of color, people of lower income are the ones who suffer with this rhetoric that he's spouting. He lives in comfort, peace, and security. But again, he's talking about violence and using like these key words when in reality he's describing police interacting with criminals. Okay, that's primarily who they interact with. We have body cams. We know what the reality is. Remember that big push for the police to wear body cams, and it turned out the reason why was because they thought they were gonna reveal all this. The police are just targeting individuals because of their color or because of X, Y, and Z. And in reality, body cams certainly did uncover some crimes that were occurring, as they have always occurred, and on the part of police. They also uncovered that the vast majority of police interactions are completely justified and are for a reason, and they are actually working to keep the community safe. Again, he wouldn't understand anything about that because he's probably never lived in a dangerous place. He's never been around criminals. He's never seen how these people act and how these people affect those around them. So
or associated with their deployments. The glorification of dog sports combined with law enforcement and military reinforcement continues to portray these activities as credible without addressing the serious underlying problems in our culture today. This positive portrayal...
Again, he's speaking about our culture today. This is a left-wing individual, so look at everything he is pushing here through that lens.
Of weaponized dogs really does impact public perception, and it has led to the widespread acceptance of police dogs.
I'll tell you one other thing, and this is really important. Here's why ZAK George and people like ZAK George hate dog sport, and they hate police dogs, right? They can't train them. Those types of dogs scare them, right? Remember how I was speaking about these dogs are genetically wired, they have generally thin thresholds, extreme drive. They're intense dogs. They're not like the soft little Shelties and Australian Shepherds and, you know, like the little showline Australian Shepherds and Border Collies that people like Mr. George like to play with and pretend they're training. These are dogs. These are primal creatures. These are drivey animals. You really have to understand dog behavior. You have to understand training in order to take this creature that is so full of power and speed and drive and intensity. And these dogs are also often, not, they're type A personalities, right? They tend to be a little bit more, especially when compared to those other breeds that I mentioned, dominant. Yes, I know Mr. George probably doesn't believe in dominance because, he's bought into the pseudoscience that the force-free types often use to prop up their nonsensical, again, we can talk about that in a second. They use this wolf study done by a researcher who made some observations about wolves in a zoo, and that's how they proved that dominance doesn't exist. Dominance certainly does exist, and Mr. George and his ilk would quickly find that out if they were to work with some of these working dogs. They can't train these dogs. They can't control these dogs. They can't train these dogs to do police work. They can't train these dogs to do bite sport. They can never be competitive with these types of dogs. So instead of saying, well, instead of just taking their ball and going home, they're just trying to ruin the game for everyone else. They're trying to ruin it for everyone else because really these types of dogs just personify, right? These dogs, as the existence of these dogs. And I'll talk to you too about what they're trying to do in Western Europe. They're already talking Western Europe where they've banned certain training practices. They banned certain training practices. Now what they're trying to do is ban the actual dogs. Oh, these dogs shouldn't exist. It's wrong for them to be like this. It's wrong for us to not be able to train them. Let's put them down. And that's what people like Mr. George would like to ultimately do. They would not just like to prevent people from training these dogs and having these dogs reach their genetic potential and do fantastic things like, the police work, the dog sport, all that stuff where these dogs are showing power, precision. It's more in the dog sport than the police work, to be honest with you. He would rather put an end to that because the very existence of that, it's a slap in the face to all the things that he claims to be true, and he could never, step on a field with a dog like that. He could never train with a dog like that. It would terrify him. It would make him scared. You'll also notice something else. Let me just play this.
A critical examination in her bed.
Oh my goodness. Now we got the Muslim lady. Okay, so he's talking about a story here. Okay. He's talking about a story here, and this is a story that I heard. There was a child with autism and Down syndrome in Palestine, and apparently the IDF, this is what I hear, and I truly hope it's not true, but I have a feeling it might be true. The IDF apparently set the dog on him because he wasn't cooperating because he had fucking autism and Down syndrome, and the dog killed the dogs. I think it was like multiple dogs, and apparently the dogs killed him. Again, this doesn't say anything bad about dogs. This hurts my heart. This truly hurts my heart. And you know what? Screw ZAK George for trying to use that to push his agenda. They would have killed him with a gun. You know what I mean? Like, the people that did that, if that is indeed what happened, and I have no doubt that it probably did happen considering what's going on in Gaza. And I'm not going to get into that right now. They would have killed him another way. They would have beaten him to death. They would have shot him to death. And my heart goes out to that family. And I say that may God curse those that committed that evil on that child. And he was bigger, obviously, but people with Down syndrome and autism, they're basically like children for life. And I can't imagine what that poor boy went through. And I truly hope that he's at peace now. But that is a truly tragic thing, and I wanted to acknowledge that. And there are people that have done horrible things with dogs, and used dogs and horses and other animals for terrible, terrible atrocities. But that doesn't take away from the fact that these are simply animals, and they are, they do what they're trained to do, and they can be, like all tools, used and misused. And yes, I said dogs are tools because they're a valuable tool, right? Just like many other animals can be used as tools to assist us in the various jobs that we have to do for the good of society, including law enforcement. Because having lived somewhere where law enforcement was maybe a little bit less prevalent, you would understand, again, people like Mr. George don't, that it's not good to live in those types of places, and the price of lawlessness is far more than anybody would want to pay. All right, Let's see what else we got.
Police dogs are integral in.
Have anybody noticed that, individuals that push this type of ideology, whether it's left-wing force-free ideology or whether it's left-wing ideology or whether it's force-free dog training, they all have a certain look. They have the school shooter-esque look. Have you noticed that? There's a reason for that, right? They rarely look like, upstanding, masculine, individuals or help, in the case of the men, and in the case of the females, they often don't look like, healthy, well-adjusted females either. They often have a look to them, and there's a reason for that, because, believing these things require you to lack balance mentally, and that's often manifested physically as well. Moving on.
Don't justify the widespread use of attack dogs, can escalate conflict and increase the odds of injury.
So he's saying it's escalating conflict and increasing the odds of injury. That's actually factually incorrect. In most cases, it actually decreases the conflict. All right, let's see what else he says. Again, keep in mind everything that he says. Okay, so now he's going to talk about, the mistakes in
the
training.
Isolation and physical injuries due to their training and work conditions. And so many of these police dogs face significant challenges when they're retired, including difficulty adapting to calm environments and potential euthanasia due to behavior issues.
Okay, so here's the thing. What he's not being honest with you. He's saying, this is all based on the training of the dogs and them being used as police dogs, implying that if these dogs were just taken as a puppy and given to someone like Mr. George, that they would be these well-adjusted, beautiful pets that would wear handkerchiefs and play, tug of war with him all the time. That is not what would happen. These dogs would, as someone who keeps, breeds, and trains working dogs, if you don't work the dogs, if you don't give them the mental and physical structure they need that can only be provided by a certain style of training that Mr. George does not believe in or do, these dogs quickly become unbalanced, out of control, and dangerous. Now, it is true, and this is where I'm going to really give police a hard time. A lot of police departments are not particularly good dog trainers. They're not good at dog training, and they lack the control that you would want to have on dogs like these. And that's because they're using outdated training techniques that rely more on containment versus teaching the dog actual impulse control. And that's something that they really need to step up. And they're also often engaging in training that creates a lot of unnecessary conflict between the dog and the handler. That being said, someone like Mr. George would definitely not know the solution. He would not be able to deal with these types of dogs. He would be mauled in short order, or probably say, oh, there's nothing I can do for him. He's been ruined by the other trainers. Let's euthanize him, right? So, while it's true that, many police departments certainly need to improve their game when it comes to training, it's certainly not because of the police work in and of itself. It's because these types of dogs that excel at police work are not easy to handle. And if you're doing stupid things, whether it's ZAK George type of stupid things or, whatever nonsense some of these police departments are doing, you're going to get chewed up, right? Or you're going to get someone else chewed up. So let's move along here. Let's find out. Yes. So what now? Here's going to be his. Let's see what his call to action is. And I have a feeling I know what it is, but let's see. Sorry, guys, my computer seems to be freezing.
De-escalation techniques, community safety programs, crisis intervention and mental health support teams, and reevaluating.
Okay, so he's going to talk about, we just need more programs, the usual left-wing call for programs that result in what? Higher crime. Don't believe me? You've got 4 years of that in the United States, so you can see the state of crime. You can look at the crime stats with all the programs and money that have been thrown at it. And you can see here in Canada, 8+ years of Trudeau and those types of ideas, like Toronto. The crime is spiking in Toronto, for instance, because of similar ideology. We just need more crisis intervention teams, and we need more programs for the youth, right? And it's like, no, we need law and order, and we need you guys to stop pushing, this degenerate ideologies that break up families, and that's simply actually the greatest single statistic in what pushes an individual to commit crimes, and develop mental health issues, so on and so forth, is usually a lack of cohesion in the family unit, which the left has been almost solely responsible for destroying. I know that a lot of people might fight me on that, and that's because you just simply haven't thought about it properly and understand the incentives for maybe separating man and woman, the nucleus of the nuclear family. And one of the biggest things that you'll see with people in prison and people that commit crimes is they grew up in a single parent home. They often didn't receive the necessary structure, attention, discipline. Yes, I said discipline, something that ZAK George does not believe in, as a child, and thus grew into the type of individual that would then go and commit crimes. You see weakness, whether it's in a dog trainer or in a leader of a society at large. Weakness, the type of weakness that you see personified in an individual like ZAK George, is actually the cause of the greatest harm. When there is strength, when there is structure, when there is stability, you don't have, widespread crime, you don't have widespread violence. People understand the rules, and same with the dogs, so it turns out. Understand the rules, there's less violence, there's less area for people to maybe take advantage when they wouldn't normally take advantage, so on and so forth. Again, these things are logical things that someone that has like a basic level of IQ can understand, someone that has any kind of real world experience can understand. In dog training, like for instance, the issues that ZAK George would experience when working with a dog, I would not experience, because the dog would read me very quickly and understand that, oh, that's not going to work. Also, the dog would become a lot more secure with me and would like me a lot more than it would like him, because the dog would, again, dogs are very smart, inherent, right? It would be like, oh, that guy's a stable guy, the rules are very clear with him. He's going to guide me through the world. I'm going to look to him for direction. Whereas Mr. George, it's like, oh my God, like this guy's, clearly unstable, and he's not going to be able to guide me through anything, and I'm going to have to be completely responsible for myself, which is a very scary thing for a dog, a child, an individual with mental health issues, so on and so forth. So Mr. George's prescription has been tried for many decades. It does not work. And our society at large needs to clean up. We need to discard these ideologies that clearly don't work and haven't worked. The left always presents these ideas as brand spanking new. They are not new. They've been tried many a time. They don't work, no matter how much you fudge the paperwork, which they do. And that's, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap it up on this one. I'm sure he'll try to hit me with a copyright strike on this. But again, this is all fair use, and I'll keep it up as long as I can. I believe that people like Mr. George, that have that sick, unbalanced ideology, they need to be. I see he's commenting on Ivan Balabanov's post. Ivan Balabanov, I guess he's going to the UK. So those of you in the UK, go check out Mr. Balabanov. Not a friend of mine. I don't really know the man, but I do know he's a good dog trainer, because he competes. He's been competing at a very high level in probably the most difficult dog sport in the world for many a year, and he has quite a few accomplishments, which you can easily look up. And Mr. ZAK George, who has zero accomplishments beyond finding a way to make the YouTube algorithm like him, is on there criticizing him and talking to, are you going to be promoting inhumane training methods? It's like, ZAK, why are you talking to Ivan Balabanov? You two are not the same, right? You're not the same, ZAK. Like, you're not the same as pretty much any dog trainer. I would put your skills on level with, maybe a 12-year-old girl's, that maybe watched a few how-to videos on like YouTube or something. Like, you're not a good dog trainer. You're not a dog trainer, really. You're, an ideologue that makes content on YouTube. Ivan Balabanov is one of the best dog trainers in the world, and will go down as such, and will leave a legacy behind him. I intend to do the same, by the way. You, sir, will be a footnote in history that will not be remembered. No one will, once you're off YouTube, no one will ever know about you. No one will ever think about you. And YouTube won't be forever. Just keep that in mind. Anyways, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. See you on the next one.